nigh to reflect black her blushes, give sigh for sigh. Perfect, Lady Hartright, perfect. I have no words to describe it.
I say, I would die enraptured to hear you play Miss Erstwhile.
No, not tonight, not tonight.
Go on.
Miss Erstwhile, I insist. Okay.
Allow me.
Thank you. I only really know one song.
Play that one then.
Surprising. So I'll just play that. It's getting hot in here, so take off all your clothes. I am getting so hot, I'm gonna take my clothes off. I think I will retire early. That was friggin' awesome.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
It's May. I think by the time this goes up, it might be May already, which I can't even believe.
I know.
We have a very fun book and movie today, but if you're new, here's the thing. When the pandemic kind of situation started, we're both named Margot, by the way. Mm-hmm. We both decided that we were going to do a brand new episode every single week, which makes it difficult. You know, we have actual lives, and you can't always get through a 300-page book in a week and also live your life. So we decided that we would expand for this unusual time. We're going to expand our definition of book to include any literary source whatsoever of a movie. So all of our movies are still adaptations, but it may be a magazine article or a play, even a song, all kinds of things. And today, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, you guys.
It's okay, Bocce's staying with Margot today.
I'm dog sitting my mother's little Morky, and so there's a yippy little dog barking in the background. My apologies. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is we are always looking for suggestions because it's hard to keep up with a new episode every week. So if you have suggestions for books or other kinds of, any kind of source that's been adapted into a movie that you think we should cover, there's a few places where you can do that and interact with us and other listeners on the internet.
Yes, Margot, somebody just reached out to us on our Facebook page that literally just found the show because of MASH and then got really excited because we have like 100 episodes in our queue right now. So we do have a basic Facebook page. We also have a Facebook group, which is where people kind of hang out and talk about ideas for books and movies. This is a Facebook group suggestion. They kind of came up with it a couple of weeks ago. I've never heard of this book or this movie. I love Jane Austen, too. Like, this is for me. We're also on Twitter and Instagram. And at those places you spell out book versus a movie. You can send us suggestions there or just say hi. And we also have a basic old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers or some merch, we'd be happy to send that to you. And we should also say that anything that we're going to be covering, it needs to be pretty easy to get. The book, we are actually covering a book today, Austenville, and it was available on the Libby app, which made it super easy. So if the book is or the magazine article is available online, the script is something we can get pretty quickly in a paperback form, that kind of thing. And the movie is really important. It has to be streaming on one of the big major services. If it's only available on a VHS tape that we have to bargain with somebody on eBay, it's just not going to happen. And this also happens with books sometimes, so keep that in mind because Margot went to the high school or was near the high school where Fast Times at Richmond High was taking place.
Yes.
That's the school he used.
Yep.
The book paperback, believe it or not, there's never been rights for it. There hasn't been rights for the paperback in like 35 years. So they go for like $70 on eBay. It's ridiculous.
That is not accessible to us or you.
Yes.
But if you really enjoy the show, like really, really, and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Yes, we do have a Patreon page. There are over 100 episodes on there. I'd say about 25% are free. Go there just to check it out for that. We just put up The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. We're putting up episodes from 2020 and then previous to that on the Patreon wall. Currently, we have 2 very affordable options. We're looking for a yearly option. I'm still working on that because a few of you have asked that because you don't want to deal with the whole monthly thing. But like I said, it's just great content, and it just keeps us in books and movies. It helps us get all that for you and pays for the hosting costs and for things like that. But if you know what? If money's tight, and we totally understand that, if you could just leave a review, like share us on your Facebook page. Like we had a listener just do that for us. Or, if you listen on Good Pods, by the way, leave a review there. Good Pods just put us on their list for indie books podcasts, and we were really excited about that.
I know that was a nice little surprise this week. Very nice. Thanks, Good Pods. I just wanted to mention, because we bring it up from time to time, and we haven't explained recently what the Libby app is. And they're not sponsoring us or anything. We just are really big fans of the Libby app. The Libby app is one of several apps that are out there that allow you to access ebooks and audiobooks from your local library. So, first of all, if you don't have a library card, get one, number one. Number two, you can go on your library's website. You can see what kind of apps they...
You can't read my handwriting. I'm trying to get more.
I cannot read that at all.
I was just saying the Brooklyn Library is making it available for anybody across the country.
Talk about this. This is amazing.
I know. I live in Brooklyn. Margot lives in San Diego. Brooklyn Library, that's where I have my Libby app, is through that. And it works with your Kindle. You could get the book and audiobooks, and it'll go to your personal device. And they are now giving library cards to anybody across the country. So if you want to feel cool, get a library card from Brooklyn. What's cooler than that?
Amazing.
Right.
Again, you look at your local library's website, see what kind of streaming app they have available. I pretty much can guarantee Oxnard Library has one. So, but Libby is kind of like the biggest one in the country, and that's the one that we usually use. So I use it through my San Diego County Library account, and Margot uses it through Brooklyn Library. To combat all of the book
banning.
Why are we even talking about this in the 21st century? Yes, they're banning books. And librarians are superheroes, and Brooklyn Library is being amazing, and they are extending their catalog to young people all over the United States. And yes, please do check it out, especially if you have a student living in your home. You'll want to take advantage of this amazing free resource. Yay, libraries!
Yay, libraries. Yes, indeed. And that really dovetails nicely with our author today. Her name is Shannon Hale. She writes this book, Austenland. She is ridiculously productive. I've been reading about her. She has dozens and dozens of books. She writes for kids. She writes for teens. This is her first adult novel, Austenland. And she's also a big proponent of libraries. And I've been following her on Twitter. On Twitter, she's at Hale Shannon, Hale Shannon. And she talks about how important they are just to the literary world. They are the tastemakers, and they help kids get their access to books that some kids, like I said, it's a free app, y'all. What's stopping you? You got to. But she wrote this in 2007. Part of me is so jealous I can barely keep myself steady, because I'm like, what a great idea to write a book called Austenland about an Austenland. It's got sellability all over it. It has adaptability written all over it. And I'm reading Lori read about her. I'm like, she's a perfectly lovely, nice person, married, 4 kids. Her website is shannonhale.com. Follow her. She has very ardent fans. And I'm really excited because this was a really fun, fast read.
It is a fun, fast read. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we covered How to Make an American Quilt. Mm-hmm. And we were saying that book kind of gets filed under the umbrella of chick lit, kind of unfairly. It really covers some more important themes. It's not like, it's sort of a beachy read, but this is really like a poolside summer. This is very squarely top shelf chick lit No questions about it. When I started reading it, I was a little bit like sniffy about it because, as I recall, Bridget Jones' diary, the book, not so much the movie, but in the book, Bridget Jones is obsessed with Pride and Prejudice and particularly the Colin Firth version of Pride and Prejudice. It's not a thing. They barely mention it in the movie, but in the book, it's like a major theme of the book. And so at first I was like, isn't this just copying Bridget Jones? But it kind of isn't, actually.
No.
Amazingly, you can have another novel about a young woman who's our age who is obsessed with Jane Austen. As women of our generation, I think we could say definitely were. I remember my sister reading every single Jane Austen. I've read most of them, but it was a huge, huge thing for us. It was sort of like, again, explaining like in the 90s.
Yes.
It was a complicated time for young women. So on the one hand, we were being told that we had to be like career minded. And on the other hand, you had Martha Stewart, like, why aren't you mixing your own house paint? Right. And also there was
You're going
this
to a
whole
store,
like,
you lazy bones.
there was this whole like Jane Austen juggernaut that all of a sudden happened very much in part due to these film adaptations, mainly the Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice, but also the Emma Thompson, what was that one? Sense and Sensibility.
Sense and Sensibility. She won the Oscar.
With Alan Rickman and what's her name? Titanic.
Kate Winslet.
What's Kate Winslet looking so gorgeous.
When does she
So
not?
it was a big thing. It was a major, major cultural moment. When you read it today, in the 21st century. I mean, this was in the beginning of the 21st century, but, you know, in 2022, when I was reading this woman, I get her because she's our age, you know, but reading her, like, from if it were happening today, I'd be like, what a freaking weirdo this woman is.
The character
so
Jane.
let's talk about Austenland.
Well, we also should say, I actually starred in the play. I was in the high school play of Pride and Prejudice. I played the middle sister.
Were you really?
Yes, I was the middle sister, the gawky one. And my history professor was very insulted. He's like, you should have been Jane. And I'm like, I was thrilled they even picked me. It was really fun. That's when I first read it. I'm an 80s kid. I would say, like, in the 80s, these period flicks started doing really well at the box office. I think it was a big surprise to people. And it was
a whole
thing.
People, first of all, like, yeah, I don't know why people thought it was going to be boring and nobody wanted to watch it. Turns out everybody wanted to watch it.
Yeah, I think it's like left over from PBS, like all those movies that were really successful in PBS. So in the 80s, they have all these period pieces that start to do really well. And then it's like, let's go to the Jane Austen mine. And then people lost their minds. I mean, she's a fantastic writer. There's so many great women writers that we've talked about. I also think it's interesting, by the way, going back to Shannon Hale, is that she speaks quite a bit about boy books and girl books and how we should just teach kids just to enjoy reading and not sectionalize it. But when you're in your 20s, sure, there's chick lit and there's dude lit. I mean, they had their Maxim magazines and we had this. That's okay. The character of Jane Hayes is in her early 30s. I believe she lives in New York City. She has is it her sister that's pregnant, or is always having kids? I don't know if it's her.
It's either her sister or her best friend.
Right.
Somebody really
Molly.
close to her.
Right. And she's obsessed with Jane Austen, with Mr. Darcy. And by the way,
to a disturbing degree.
To a disturbing
Can we
degree.
say?
I think I have more empathy. It's not like I think I get it. I have a thing for Colin Firth that'll never kind of completely go. He'd have to do something really terrible in life for me to not have an affection for him.
Oh, wouldn't you be devastated?
I would be.
I would be devastated if it turned out that Colin Firth was a jerk.
And he did something really terrible. I would be really upset. I think a lot of people would. I think just to understand that. There's a lot of middle-aged women.
It probably keeps them on the straight and narrow.
It keeps the world on its axis. Colin Firth being a nice guy. Anyway, Jane is young. She's a graphic designer type. She's in New York. And she has this habit. She says that she's only had a couple of boyfriends and she's never really been in love. She makes it sound like she's never been in love at all. And then every chapter, they start with a different guy. And then her friend or her sister, whoever it is, Molly, says, it's weird because every time you date a guy, you say you were dating. And it's like there's a difference between a date and dating and then being a relationship. That's why your 20s suck for a lot of us, because you're just learning how to do all that. And you move to a new city and you're taking care of your bills. It's a very stressful time. But she's super obsessed. She has the DVDs. Really, she talks about it all the time. She meets an aunt, and this is the first chapter, who's very wealthy and very old. And she's encouraged to engage her in conversation because nobody talks to old people. So she gets in conversation with this woman, and she basically admits, I hardly date because I'm obsessed with Mr. Darcy, and that's all I want to meet in my life. And this woman kind of has an open ear to her. And the woman passes away, her Aunt Carolyn, and in the will gives her this trip, a nice trip. And it's like all accommodations, including a first-class ticket, which I would have done this too. She sells it for economy and keeps the cash. I would do the same. Then she goes to Austenland, and Austenland, this is just such a brilliant idea. It's like the Renaissance Fair, but it's for Jane.
It totally is. Is that a thing? Is there like a Regency fair that there's got to be, right?
Has to be, right? If
Seems
they have
like
Jennifer
you're printing
Coolidge,
money.
I'm going. But we'll get to the movie in a second. She goes, and they put her in the period clothes, and they tell her to lock away her phone. And from now on, she can't talk to anybody that works there. They're servants. They're just, that you just know, incommunicado, no talking to them. And we have plays and balls and dances, and we just talk like this for 3 weeks. And then you go home, and maybe somebody will propose to you, maybe not. Some people are actors. Some people, it's just this fantasy land.
It's just all make believe, like
Right.
like how people go on those like murder mystery cruises, kind of thing. You know, it's you're having a fake fantasy relationship, just for pretensies during the duration of your stay.
I did that once in New York. They had it was like Murder in the Lower East Side. And it was turn of the century, and they took you around this. It was really neat because they were also teaching about the buildings and tenements and stuff. So I get it. You couldn't take me for 3 weeks anywhere. That's a little much for me.
That's kind of a long time.
That's a long time.
For a corset.
Let's remember, too, this is 2007. That's like 15 years ago. There's a lot that didn't exist now. Like she gives away her phone, doesn't think twice about it. And I'm like, oh, no. But she goes, she meets friends. There's some quirky people there. There's a couple of fellas that she has kind of an interest in. But like I said, every chapter of her book begins with a guy. Sometimes it's from high school, sometimes it's from college, and sometimes it's just dates that she's been on. And she kind of gives the same level of gravity to someone she dated for 2 years and almost married, to somebody else that just, they went out like 4 or 5 times, and then she found
An
out he was a jerk.
afternoon.
Yeah.
An afternoon. She's a weirdo.
She's very strange. She doesn't
She's
know about
very
boundaries, or there's something going on with her, which is kind of fun. I mean, I think that's kind of the fun of her. I just sort of embraced it, like, oh, she just doesn't know. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a level of aware. I mean, it's not like everybody is acting like that's a normal thing.
No,
you have the character. You have the character of the best friend who's like, you guys weren't in a relationship, right? Like, why are you saying you broke up? And you even have like the elderly aunt who's not in the movie at all. But the elderly aunt who says to her, like, Mr. Darcy's like not real, right? So there is an awareness to the reader, like nobody's pretending like this is a perfectly natural thing to do. And she hides her DVDs when people come over, and she's embarrassed about it. So she's another big difference between the book and the movie is, again, we have this pretense of the aunt, or this not pretense. We have this what do you call that? There's a plot point. In the book, she kind of opens up to this elderly aunt who she's meeting really for the first time, and the aunt leaves her the trip to Austenland. Mm-hmm. She would never cross that line and like book herself a trip to Austenland because she knows it's weird to be as obsessed as she is. So she probably wouldn't ever have done it herself. It's the fact that somebody did it for her that gets her on the plane, which is totally different from the movie, which we'll get to in a minute. So there's that.
Well, I think also it's just, she's sort of sent to face it. Like they're all kind of hoping that she'll snap out of it via Moonstruck. Like just like, okay, go here,
Yes.
do this thing, get it out
Like
of your system.
immersion
Therapy.
therapy.
Yes, like they're just gonna like go there, get this out of your system, then come back, and then hopefully you'll find a guy that'll make you happy, and he makes
Yeah,
make
a
each other
real
happy.
guy.
A real person, have a real relationship. But some of these relationships, like I said, 2 years, like that's pretty intense. But then the next guy is a guy she worked with, and they hooked up once, and he got too handsy, and then she just was completely devastated. I'm like, yeah, a lot of guys are creeps. I mean, you gotta. This is you're 32. You should be catching on to this by now.
Yeah, and that's part of that is part of like the fun for the reader. You enjoy that. You're like, why does she not? How is she not seeing these patterns? And the writer Shannon Hale is like giving you this like, which is really fun. She's showing you these patterns, these behaviors that the main character is not aware of, but you, the reader, are like, girl, what are you doing?
Right.
So it's very fun.
I wish I had this book when I was like 15 or 16. I think I would have.
I would have really liked it at that age. Yeah.
It's kind of perfect for that. She does meet someone there. She meets a couple of men there in the book. And I like this because, like I said, I was looking on Shannon Hale's website. She kind of wanted a different ending. She actually wanted one where she didn't pick anybody. And she kind of just came back to New York and started dating and like maybe start there doing a series of stories. But I think maybe the publisher kind of pushed her like, you need a happy ending.
You could kind of tell.
Yeah, it's kind of pushed in.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's
not
fine.
terrible. I mean, it's not. Look, if my mom would love my mother loved romance novels. Like that's exactly the formula she wanted, and she didn't want anything different. And I get that. That's what people like. So that she does meet a guy. He sits next to her on the plane, and by the time they're flying over the Atlantic Ocean back to New York, they're in love. It's
okay. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But she's in Austenland. She's in Austenland. Everything is supposed to be old timey, but we have flushing toilets. Like there's certain things. We have electrical lamps, and modern plumbing. So she's, and at first she's like really thrilled. She doesn't want to allow herself to be thrilled because she feels weird about her obsession, but she can't help but be kind of really into it. And gardener at this quote unquote gardener at the place sort of develops kind of like a on the sly friendship that is sort of turning into something else. And meanwhile, there's another, there's other women there. They're also having like the full fantasy and like speaking in British accents and flirting with the few men that are there for that purpose. Mm-hmm. And there's a kind of Mr. Darcy character. I mean, everybody knows these are actors and that, that this is part of the deal. And she's kind of into the Mr. Darcy guy, which is not surprising because that's her like main obsession of life. Oh, I was going to say another big difference is that in the book, she works for a magazine. She is a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. In the movie, we don't really know what she does for a living. And that comes into play later. So, there's a lot of, like in Jane Austen, there's like misunderstandings and flirtations and misgivings and mistaken identities and this and that. And it's very that. It goes, it's fun. If you look at those books, you will enjoy all those little turns of the plot here and there. The woman who runs it, Mrs. Waddle something, is kind of a jerk.
Yes.
And she's really snobby.
She likes
and
the caste system very, very much. I bet
very
she
much.
misses it.
And
yeah.
she researches everybody who comes to her Austenland. And so she knows that Jane has not bought the ticket herself. And so she's not going to waste her time trying to butter her up in the hopes of getting like a return visit from her. So she's just really awful to Jane. And her husband, who drinks, hits on Jane and, is really awful. It's like kind of a yucky moment. So she's the whole time Jane is like, what am I doing? This is so much fun, but what am I doing? So she's going back and forth and that's kind of fun. By the end, there's a play, right? Mrs. Waddle has written a play and they all have to be in this play, which is a very Austen-esque sort of a thing. And she's in it with the Darcy character who's called Nobley. all the names are very funny.
They're really cute.
She's Miss Jane Erstwhile and yeah, anyway, at the end, she discovers Mrs. Waddle Whatsit, who's mean to her, is like, yeah, that gardener you've been flirting with, I was totally in on that. And, I thought you liked slumming it, so I had him flirt with you. And she's understandably very upset and says that she tells the owner lady, she's like, well, if you researched me, then I work for a magazine and I'm doing all of this for a magazine piece. And your stupid little NDA doesn't apply to me because I'm a journalist. That gets her goat. And she leaves. And as she is at the airport, the gardener shows up and is like, but I really liked you. You da-da-da. And she doesn't know. She's like, you're just an actor. And that lady sent you to try to talk me out of writing my piece about her business practices. And then the other guy shows up too, the Mr. Darcy guy. And he's like, yeah, this is the other thing. So in the book, the Mr. Darcy guy, Mr. Nobley, is an actor. In the movie, he's the nephew of the owner. In the book, he's an actor. And at one point, Jane and Mr. Nobley are actually connecting like as actual people, not as an actor and a customer. And she finds out his real name. When she tells the owner off, she asks the owner as she's leaving, she's like, oh yeah, by the way, Mr. Nobley, what's his real first name? And the owner didn't know. And she's like, all right, lady, yeah, we're done here. And she leaves. So when the Mr. Darcy guy shows up at the airport, so she already trusts him a little bit because she understands that he's also being played by this owner lady. Mm-hmm. And so she sort of has feelings for him, but mostly what happens is the two men are fighting over her now. One, we don't know, the gardener guy, we don't know what his motive is. Does he really have feelings for her, or he's kind of smarmy, so we don't really know. And then the other guy, okay, he has feelings for her, but he's fighting this gardener guy. Like, what's that about? You're fighting in an airport, like slap fighting in an airport, another two grown men. And so she has a moment while she's watching all this and she's like, yeah, I think I'm done with all this now. Like, I think I really have gotten this out of my system and I'm ready to get on with my life. And I agree, like the book could have ended right there.
Yeah, and just have her.
And it did not.
No, it had them meeting on the airplane and then talking.
So yeah. So this is weird to me. Tell me what you think. So so now she's on her flight home. Okay, so she has the moment of clarity, which we've been waiting for her to have. Awesome. She gets on the plane. She's like, I'm ready to go home and live my normal life now.
Live my
and
truth.
Really have my truth and have a real relationship with an actual human man. And then all of a sudden, Darcy guy, the actor, in his full costume still, mind you, comes walking down the plane. And this is post 9/11. So he had to go through some hoops to like buy a plane ticket at the last minute. Must have cost a fortune. I guess he had his passport on him. Comes down the aisle and her reaction, I mean, first of all, I'm like, girl, call security.
Right.
This man is crazy. What are you doing? He sits down. I mean, I don't know. I would have been pushing that button for the stewardess like so fast. Get this man out of here. I don't know him. He is a stranger. I've met him, but I don't even know his last name. He was an actor. Anyway, they're making out on the plane.
The whole way
very
home.
Shortly. They have a brief conversation and then they kiss from London to New York, which is like, what, a 6-hour flight?
It is 6.
That is a long time to be kissing. Even somebody you're really into. That's a long time. So they kiss all the way home and live happily ever after. How is that supposed to work? How does she not see that this man is a nut job?
He says to her,
who does that?
You were the answer to my fantasy. Which is just as sick. And it's just as it's not healthy.
No. Where is this going to go?
Where is it supposed to go? Other than that, I mean, I think if they had left it for her to just like, I'm going to start dating now and I'm going to figure that,
That's
I'm going to figure this
fine.
stuff out. Yeah.
It just, I was reading that ending with my mouth open the whole time. Like, who is this guy? You just met him. Why are you making out with him? He's coming to a different country with you. what's going to happen when you guys land? Where is he staying?
Well,
Does
where's
he have a
staying?
hotel room?
Does he have luggage? Does he have anything with him? Does he have a job? Is he going to be like
Yeah.
now hanging out on your couch while you're at work all day?
A transatlantic flight. It's not a little puddle jumper. It's like, that's a major flight.
It's a major life decision. Who does? And yes, exactly. Yeah.
That is not a stable person. Run.
Run to the light.
Yeah. So that's how the book ends.
And then
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. It does very well. And I could see it. I mean, this is like, and also that you know, I've talked about this back in the day, but it's a great subway read or something like you read on your lunch break. You just kind of pop in with it, and but it does very well, and it gets sold. And Stephanie Meyer is one of the producers, and she did all those Bella vampire movies, which we won't cover. I don't think. I really have
No. Maybe if we totally run out of Halloween things to do, but
maybe
that doesn't seem likely.
Yeah. And so it's Jerusha Hess is the screenwriter, and she co-screenwrote with Shannon Hale. She's also from, what's the movie I'm thinking of? Did you read her?
Napoleon Dynamite.
Napoleon Dynamite. She's friends with the actor from that movie. I think they're all LDS. I think they're all Mormons. I think they're from the same kind of Mormon.
I think that's right.
I think that's their friendship circle.
I love Napoleon Dynamite.
It's a cute movie. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah.
She was a co-writer on that, and so she's directing this movie, and it's available on Hulu right now if y'all want to check it out. And why don't we play the trailer, and then we'll talk about this movie. We'll take a little quick break.
What separates the casual Jane Austen fan
Oh, Janie, it's gotten so much worse.
from the aficionado? The number of times she's read Austen's novels or her consuming love for Mr. Darcy.
This is the best part.
Unbelievable.
She finds her way here to the world's only immersive Austen experience.
You're going to the Darcy place too?
Yes. I memorized the first 3 chapters of Pride and Prejudice when I was 13.
What's that?
Welcome to the Regency era.
Look at those.
I expect my guests to eschew all things modern. May I present Miss Jane Erstwhile, an orphan of no fortune. You have paid for the basic copper package.
You're in the servants' wing. You're in the creepy tower.
So mad I wasted all my money.
Oh, look. It's one of those Mr. Darcy guys.
I hear there was a ball on her last night.
Do you enjoy dancing?
Not particularly.
You have been unlucky in love.
I am single because apparently the only good men are fictional.
What do you guys think of that girl, Jane?
She's a bit peculiar.
You try to catch her eye.
Tally-ho, a hunting we will go!
I'm
Kind of a mess, aren't I?
I'm going to take charge of my story. An Austen heroine gets engaged by the end of the book. That is what I am going to do.
I'm really into you. You want to get out of here?
Miss Erstwhile?
This was filmed in the UK. It stars Keri Russell as Jane Hayes. She's so adorable. She's really...
I think she's great in this. I think the whole
perfect.
cast is really well done.
Very.
The casting it's not unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would never have thought to put that combination of actors together, but it really works.
Yeah. We have J.J. Field as Henry Nobley, Bret McKenzie.
Bret from Flight of the Conchords.
Bret. He plays Martin, the guy that works there. Jennifer Coolidge. If you, for no other reason to see this movie, Jennifer Coolidge made me laugh out loud several times.
She's a genius. Yes, me too.
There's a scene where somebody says,
She
how do you
is
get your face to
just-
look that glowy? And she just says, I stick it in the fire. I fell off my couch laughing. You could tell people are really enjoying her. Like she cracked people up because there's sometimes their faces you could just tell. Jane Seymour as Mrs. Waddlesbrook.
What a great choice. She's amazing.
Beautiful.
She looks ridiculously gorgeous. I know. But she's so well cast as this like sickeningly cloying,
right?
Two-faced, either like cloyingly sweet on the one hand and then just like gross and conniving on the other. Oh, she's great in this.
She's fantastic. James Callis as Colonel Andrews. Georgina King as Lady Amelia Hartright. She's really funny. I like the scene where they're reading out loud. And they're just...
She had had many a hint from Mr. Knightley, and some from her own heart.
I have one too. Ooh. Mr. Darcy said to Jane, Jane, listen. Listen right now. If you were to sleep with me tonight, I would actually speak to you the next day. Unlike any man that you will meet 100 years from now.
They're all trying to go for accents here and try. Jennifer Coolidge doesn't even know what Jane Austen's about. She doesn't even know.
She just calls it the Darcy place. Yes. It's just a fun, it's just a fun theme park to her.
She's just, she's really rich and she gets bored. So she just travels to this thing. Keri Russell, by the way, uses her entire savings to go to this thing. It's a whole...
Yes.
Different.
So now very different. So in this version, we don't have the dwelling on all of the past quote unquote boyfriends, which is great. We have a couple. We have just little glimpses into enough to give us understanding that that she's not really going at this relationship thing
in a smart way.
In a smart way. And we have the best friend who is concerned. But in this one, she does cross the line into spending all of her life savings, which the one in the book would never do. She spends all of her money on this trip that she thinks is going to... it's funny. She kind of... And I like that she has the conflict the same as the one in the book, where on the one hand, she's really thrilled and excited, and this is her life stream, is to go do something like this. And on the other hand, she knows it's weird.
Yeah, she knows she needs to do something about it. At some point, she's going to have to confront some things. They go and she goes and she's in the bronze plan or the copper plan. There's different levels, so she's treated. I love this. This was smart to do in the movie.
I like this idea. I thought it was very smart.
It gives us more set pieces, and it gives us the idea that people were treated differently depending on what class you were as a person. So she tells her, on the first day they're riding to the castle, there's there are only two people can fit in this cab. You have to sit in the back of the carriage. And she's and then Jennifer Coolidge leans in oh, hey. It's just, so she's just, she has to ride all through the mud and everything that gets on her. I was laughing the whole time. This movie's very enjoyable, I have to say.
It's a very fun movie.
Yeah.
Again, the cast the whole combination of those actors is so funny. It's very unexpected. The writing is funny, but just everybody is doing such a great job. Everybody is hilarious. Bret McKenzie is so funny. When he's singing along to the soft rock.
Is that Billy Ocean he's singing along to?
Suddenly. Yeah.
He's always listening to sappy tunes like that on his headphones. I love these little touches. There's not a lot of comms in the comedy sometimes. They just kind of really lean into the rom part. This movie's really leaning into the comedy. We've got some really funny people and good actors.
Very fun.
Let's just have fun with this. I adore the scene where she's performing on the piano and the one woman sings a song and out of tune. And then Keri Russell, Jane, starts singing "It's Hot in Here" by Nelly. That's the level of humor that they have, but I kind of really enjoy that. I think she's with the other women, and she's a little competitive with the girl that's around her age. And then Jennifer Coolidge is just one of those people. She's nice to everybody. Jennifer Coolidge also, like, they just let her I love it when they just let her improv. Just let her do her own lines.
She's hilarious. She's so funny.
She's like, oh, you're in the creepy part of the house. You're on the creepy floor.
I just think about you in here at night.
Oh, Jane! Oh, I'm so sorry. You know, I know how it feels to be treated badly by stupid men. I really do. Jane, come on. Give me a hug. Well, at least it's not going to happen at this place. Besides, you'll feel totally different tomorrow. Think about all the people in the world that hang themselves. And then the next day, they feel different. But there's nothing they can do about it. Don't hang yourself, Jane. Mm-hmm. Anyway, if you need anything, just call me. I'm right down the hall. Well, actually, I'm not right down the hall because you're in the servants' wing. And you're in the creepy tower.
It's so good. And another thing, like I love this about. There's a lot of things that they're so fun about this movie. They really take the book and like dial it up to 11. Yeah. So Austenland in the book is weird, cheesy. Like I said, she's electrical lights and flushing toilets, and nobody's allowed to speak 21st century language in any way. But in the movie version, like it goes even further. It's like silk flowers. The costumes are very, very Hollywood looking, all the crazy colors of the costumes. And there's this weird, like, Jane Seymour, who's, again, we've said, hilarious. She has this constant, like, voiceover that gets broadcast over the whole place periodically, like reminding women to wear their corsets, reminding them not to talk to the servants, and, reminding them all like old-timey manners that they're supposed to be adapting to. It's very funny.
If you know what you repeat it, 'cause I know that you're a good man, but you like to keep that secret.
Is that the stable boy abandoned you?
No, he's coming right back.
Well, I wasn't raised to leave a woman alone in the woods.
Oh, I'm fine.
All right, come on, get up.
Both of us on the one horse?
Get up.
I don't know if that's going to really work for me because I don't know
You
how.
ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Look, we're not going to be able to outrun the storm unless you straddle the horse.
Not possible in this rig. Sorry. Whoa!
Get forward.
Okay.
Forward. Well, that's it. Forward. Take the reins. Now, anyone who can shoot a gun like that can ride a horse. Come here.
Oh, you have me?
I've got you fine. Thank you.
Bret. He's super cute. He's really...
It's very cute. Yeah.
He has a crush on her. He, like you said, he sings sappy songs and he's wooing her for a while. And you're thinking, well, maybe this is where it's going to go. And then they kind of put her up with our Mr. Nobley. I just love these names. And their relationship kind of sort of starts to build, which is nice. They kind of get to know each other. I have to say, like, the costuming is great because they really, like, Keri Russell's like just a very naturally beautiful woman, like no makeup or anything. And they put the very stern hairstyle on her. But yeah, they put this very stern hairdo on her, and her clothes are pretty drab compared to Jennifer Coolidge, they're not going to put her in a drab outfit anyway, but it just totally makes sense. She's kind of doing the character that we also talked about. We talked about Legally Blonde last summer. Mm-hmm. And it's that very similar Jennifer Coolidge thing where she's playing someone who's ditzy but has a really good, just super, super funny. And she's terrific in this. And there's a part where Mr. Wattlesbrook makes a really gross pass at Jane.
Yeah.
And she flips him like.
Yeah. Which is great.
Moves,
yeah. She has some moves.
Yeah. And there's a sexy guy that comes in with who's a much more modern haircut, and he's shirtless, and he's brought in to kind of entertain the women. I would say this with the movie. I would say at one point I even said out loud to the screen, like, didn't they hire any other people? Because it feels like there's like 10 people in this whole operation.
Yeah,
And
it kind of does, huh?
So, like, okay, so it's going out of business. I mean, that's something that would kind of alarm me if there was, like, not a lot of people there. So, in the end, who does she wind up with? She does wind up with, but it's not as...
It's not as weird. So,
Right.
in the end, they have the whole scene at the airport where the two men are fighting, and she's like, no. And she gets on the plane, she goes home.
Right.
And she's now going to de-Austenize her home, which is great. And so she does that, and there's a knock at the door. She thinks it's her best friend, and it turns out it's the actor who was playing Mr. Nobley. So it makes more sense. Like, he is now in New York City. He has stopped by her home. He's wearing regular clothes like a normal guy would. Yeah, it's much more believable. It's still a little extreme. You know, he still got on a plane and went to another country, but you get the impression that, like, he probably has a hotel room. He's
worked that out.
He's worked that out, and he's not like immediately sucking down her tongue down his throat,
right?
Unlike on the airplane at the end of the book. So it's a much more romantic and
Realistic.
less upsetting
Yes.
ending.
Thanks. You could have mailed it.
I could have. You're right. What was I thinking?
Wait a minute. Hey, I'm not going to report your aunt, so it was a little overkill to send you all the way here.
She didn't send me.
Mr. Nobley, or whoever you actually are.
My name is Henry. It's Henry Nobley. I'm a history professor.
Oh. That's really nice.
I used to think my aunt's profession was somewhat grotesque. But the truth is, I enjoyed stepping into history. The idea of a simpler world where love is straightforward and lasting. I believe we have that in common. But all of this is secondary to the fact that I am completely mad about you.
All right, well, you may have been mad about Miss Erstwhile, but you don't even know me.
You are Miss Erstwhile. I saw you in the theatrical. You were horrified.
Whoa, wait a minute. You were horrifying. I wasn't great.
My point exactly. Neither one of us are capable of pretending.
No, wait, I just don't think this is...
The night of the ball, you said you wanted something real. I'd like to believe that I am real. Is it possible that someone like me can make you happy? Will you let me try?
No, see, people don't do this. I mean, this is my fantasy. This isn't...
Will you stop to consider that you might have this all backward? Jane, you are my fantasy.
It's cute.
It's adorable.
And she's gotten to a place again where she can, and you don't know, it might work out, it might not work out. You know, she's not rushing into it. They're taking their time. They're going to get to know each other, and so it's a much nicer ending than the one in the book. I really liked the way that they handled that.
Me too. The movie is released. It's at the Sundance Film Festival of all places in 2013.
Okay.
All right. And it's released to 4 pictures. This isn't if this were a Miramax movie, there'd be a lot of different things going on here.
Well, there would be boobs.
There'd be a lot of boobs. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's Sony Pictures, I believe. They release it to just a few theaters. if this were on Hulu or Netflix just as a new movie, I think it would be a huge hit. I think
it could even be a series.
Absolutely.
It's great. I just really liked it. I really enjoyed it very much, and I'd never even heard of it.
I think like Keri Russell and Jennifer Coolidge run it together, and they run Austenland together and they help people. I don't know. I think it could totally
like Fantasy Island.
Yes, but
only run by women.
And you don't have to learn a lesson. You just get your fantasy. I like that very much. It does. It's 4 or 5 on the Rotten Tomatoes meter. Like that's always sort of. I think it's a perfectly enjoyable movie. It's not perfect. I would say like it wasn't a big budget. You could tell they're kind of keeping it, like I said, a small cast, a few locations, but the locations they use are beautiful and they are effective. I like the very, very end where, spoiler, Jennifer Coolidge takes over the business and decides to run it.
That's such a cute epilogue. I loved it. It's so fun.
It's fun.
Of course she should buy it.
Yes.
Of course she should.
And run it. And she runs it properly. It's packed with women. It's doing great. It's candy cane for your brain. I don't know. It's just a fluffy, frothy good time. And it's with really talented people. And I super, super enjoyed it. It really made me smile. And like I said, Jennifer Coolidge made me laugh out loud several times.
So funny. She has so many great moments.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, she's one of those people that when she shows up, you're like, yay, she's here. Oh, I love her. I love when she's coaching Keri Russell how to have a British accent.
She's just trying for that British accent the whole time. And it's
so good.
It's so great. It's so funny. I just super loved it. I think it's completely enjoyable. It's really fun. And this is why I like doing the podcast, because I had no idea about this. I didn't know any of this.
Nope, me either. Nope, hadn't heard of either.
It was the readers that really pointed out to us. So that's why we're really grateful for the suggestions. If it's book versus movie, I think I'm going to go with the movie because...
Oh, yeah.
I think they improved on some of what was lacking in the book. I think Keri Russell really is fantastic. She's always good in what she does. I think at this time in her career, this is before she did The Americans, I think maybe people were just kind of saw her as a pretty face, and she's actually a fantastic actress, and she can do comedy really well. She's very funny.
She's very funny. Yeah. Yes. Impressively funny. No, I agree. I think that the things in the book where as a reader, you're like, this chick is weird. I like that they leaned into that in the movie and like really cranked it up, where she's got like that bedroom where it says Darcy was here over the bed and everything.
I love Darcy on everything. And the life-size cutout of Colin Firth.
Great. Oh, I mean, come on. I liked all of that stuff. I thought that they turned up the right things and mellowed out the right things too that needed to be mellowed out. And I think it works. It's great. It's funny. I definitely the movie, but I also enjoyed the book.
Yep.
So we had a couple of ideas for what to do next.
We could go in different places. So I was listening to Karina Longworth's, what's her podcast?
You Must Remember This.
Thank you. They're talking about sexy movies from the 80s, but I think like this is an old movie. It's The Postman Always Rings Twice. It's James and Cain.
Ooh.
It's only 120 pages. It's the original, I think, with Lana Turner would be really fun.
That sounds great. Let's do that.
Let's just do it.
I haven't seen that in ages. Yeah, let's just do that one. That's great.
And then we'll figure out the rest of May coming up. Please send us your suggestions. As we said before, please follow us on all the things. We really like that. And thank you once again to Good Pods for putting us on your list for best independent book podcasts. We certainly are that. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me on social media at Brooklyn Fitchick. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. We will be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book vs. Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.